Nayyib Bukele has become one of the most popular right-wing leaders globally, largely due to a sharp decline in El Salvador's homicide rate, following the launch of his territorial control plan. However, media outlets such as El Faro, as well as the US Treasury and State Departments, have for years now alleged that his government secretly negotiated with gangs. On Thursday, May 1st, 2025, the Salvadoran digital media outlet El Faro interviewed two leaders of the Barrio 18 Revolucionarios gang, who confirmed that several gangs maintained a deal with President Nayyib Bukele. This agreement allowed gangs to collaborate with the government to create the appearance of public security, helping to pave the way for Bukele's political rise. First in the 2015 mayoral elections, then the 2019 presidential race, and finally the 2021 parliamentary elections. We spoke with Walter Raudales, editor of El Independiente, a Salvadorian newspaper.
Well, first of all, this has been common knowledge here in El Salvador. Everyone knew Bukele had made a deal with the gangs. What was missing was hard proof. This recording confirms what we all suspected. The strength of Bukele's government lies in that pact. It's not a surprise. Bukele didn't even have a party at first. He left the leftist FMLN, where he'd been elected mayor twice, then climbed through minor taxi parties, and finally secured a candidacy with a right-wing party he once swore off. He's never had a genuine social base. What he does have is a powerful digital base, an aggressive, tech-savvy communications network. But in reality, his true social support came from the gangs. It was well known that several of his ministers and even alternate deputies were linked to them, as shown in the El Faro video.
Nuestro país vivió hace unos días un aumento de asesinatos.
A key element of Bukele's international reputation is his purported ability to rapidly turn around a near-failed state and reduce violence. However, it has become increasingly clear that repression alone cannot restore peace in an impoverished society, unless, of course, one is willing to strike a deal with the devil, which might well describe this particular case.
Dude, talking to you about these points is very delicate, because it's like taking credit for something I might know, but I can't tell you. Because like this, well, you know what I mean? I'm never going to tell you, again, that I know about a homicide. But it was said with Marroquin, if something is done without a body, there's no crime. That tells you everything. Everything, everything. Without a body, there's no crime. It was an extreme case, since they had handed someone over, someone was in prison. And like I told you, Marroquin said it, and I can tell you, and I'll repeat it again. Marroquin said it, without a body, there's no crime.
And are these Carlos Marroquin's exact words?
Yes. According to the law, if there's no evidence of a homicide, there's no homicide. You walk free.
Some of the gangs enjoy privilege and were allowed to extort only businesses, not the poor, while keeping their areas of influence, especially when COVID-19 broke out and President Bukele declared an absolute lockdown. In many areas of the country, that social order was enforced not just by public authorities, but by gang members, following strict orders from the top.
During the COVID-19 emergency, he asked us for support, and we gave it. Well, we were doing, in theory, we were doing our part, or I don't know what shit it was, or whatever you can call it. But we were collaborating, so there was order even in the distribution of the food boxes. We participated, we coordinated, we knew how many food boxes should be given to each family. Because you know that things always get out of control.
Bukele took office in June 2019 after having won with your support, just as you're telling us. What different things did he promise you as president?
But if you can see, the cessation of the war, well, it's over. There were no more deaths from either side of the police force. Is there anything stronger than that? I don't think there is, because the lives of the security forces were respected, and the lives of our people were respected as well.
The pact reportedly ended after a spike in killings in 2022, which the MS-13 gang used to pressure the government while renegotiating the agreement. In response, Bukele launched a sweeping crackdown in all three gangs that result in over 85,000 arrests and the suspension of basic civil rights. Some of the leaders were allowed to escape by the same government functionaries that allowed them to operate unmolested to that point. Bukele's growing consolidation of power has sparked concerns about democratic backsliding. In 2020, he deployed soldiers to the legislature to pressure lawmakers, and later replaced top judges and the attorney general with loyalists. His administration has been accused of targeting journalists and censoring the press, intensifying fears of authoritarianism and the erosion of civil liberties.
What matters about Alfaro's report is the evidence. People in the communities already knew. Gang leaders had privileges, some held jobs in mayor's offices and ministries. Everyone saw it. But it was all hidden behind a massive digital campaign that fooled the world. This so-called security strategy didn't just lower crime on its own, it instructed gangs to bury the dead. With no bodies, there were no crimes to report. Official homicides dropped, but disappearances and clandestine graves surged. And Bukele, holding absolute power, declared the data confidential, blocking any serious investigation. So what Alfaro provides is confirmation. What we knew, suspected, and said all along. Now there's solid proof. What should come next is action from the justice system. Instead, officials are working to silence the issue and go after the journalists who exposed it.
On April 14 at the White House in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump met with Salvadorean President Nayyib Bukele, who is serving a second consecutive term despite widespread claims it violates El Salvador's constitution. Trump, now seeking a return to power despite a U.S. constitutional ban on a third term, joined Bukele in rejecting a Supreme Court order to return Gilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. He is now among thousands held in El Salvador's CECOT mega prison. To learn more about prison conditions, we spoke with a legal counselor from the Legal Guardianship Office named after Doctora Maria Hernandez, a civil rights advocate who resisted military regimes. The organization, which provides legal aid and rights education, says the current waves of detention echoes past abuses. Thousands disappeared during a military-led war on terrorism and insurgency, which critics say was a violent campaign to control territory and silence dissent.
El CECOT, para empezar, pues tiene graves problemas en cuanto a
Well, within the CECOT, to begin with, you have serious problems regarding transparency, the funds that have been used, where they came from, and what funds are still being used in this mega prison. Well, it was never clear. None of the supposed works or constructions that the government has done. There is no information whatsoever. That means that at the CECOT, we have no information about murders. Well, this could also be due to the same denial. It's in the prison system, where all these murders or these events that have been recorded at the hands of the state are taking place. Serious violations, from torture, rape, and miscarriages among women. And at the CECOT, it's something that hasn't been properly recorded, let's say, The information is obscure. It seems to us that it's related to this pact that has been in place with the gangs for 3 or more years. And so it's like a prison where the image of holding the most dangerous people is revealed. But in reality, more violent, criminal, and violating acts are reported in other prisons. We're talking about prisons like Izalco, the same Mariona prison, or others in the country where, in reality, the murders of many arbitrarily detained people have been determined. So perhaps the CECOT is something more media-friendly to use and present it globally as a model center, and no one will be released, according to recent statements by officials. So the problem is that journalists are only shown this prison. In reality, none of the other centers in the country are allowed in, and there's no information about the detainees, who are ill and have received medical care. And sometimes the family finds out that way. And other times, unfortunately, funeral homes notify the family of the person in custody that their detained relative has died.
On April 24, 2025, Panamanian Customs Police found 1,152 packages of cocaine hidden among bags belonging to the Salvadorean State Coffee Company, which in itself is not a rare occurrence. The curious part is the official reaction that followed the incident.
Por ejemplo, usted mencionó el contenedor.
You mentioned the container found with cocaine that involves a state-managed company. Well, this container with cocaine isn't the first one they've found. One appeared in Spain, headed to Portugal. The same quantity they just seized. It was a ship coming from Peru, supposedly. I mean, but there are thousands of questions, right, that any analyst is going to ask. I mean, well, from the basics. I mean, this one, how is it that in this hangar where there are thousands of containers, they're going to open that one exactly? Evidently, you look at it and say, well, they already had the information, right? Spanish customs already had the information that the drug shipment was there. But here in El Salvador, that was kept confidential. There's nothing. In fact, I just read a note where a journalist asked an official today, "What information do you have about the container found in Panama?" And he was taken out of the press conference, almost pushed. I have the report from the Salvadoran Journalists Association, where they issued an alert an hour ago. The journalist was removed, and the Finance Ministry's communications officers pushed him out. In other words, he was practically removed, and so there are no, let's say, pieces of information you can rely on to conduct an analysis.
Alejandro Diaz questions the lack of due process and sees it as an instrument for social control and consolidation of power.
The arrests have been made with biased discrimination in places of social strata without any truth, without any investigation. In other words, we're talking about a social cleansing. Populisms are used, and as we unfortunately mentioned, they want to repeat these patterns. Emergencies that have no fundamental basis. The Inter-American Court told El Salvador last year that there was no longer any reason for a supposed emergency. It should return to the regime established in the Constitution. What are the requirements for such an emergency? To begin with, this emergency does not fit within those constitutional requirements, because we are not facing a case of public calamity or a disaster. First of all, this declaration of emergency has a specific time frame of just 1 or 2 months. So these emergency actions are being used, as I said, for social control, to consolidate power.
A symptom of the neo-feudal society unraveling in front of our eyes is the prevalent influence of the tech giants in the general public. And now, powerful figures like Bukele are taking advantage of that.
El gobierno le ha dado $500 millones a Google en 5 años, ¿sabe eso?
The government has given Google $500 million over 5 years. You know that. And Google isn't going to create a single job. It's not going to create anything. They have an office with maybe 5 employees. So, what is that $500 million really for over 5 years? It's simple. Take right now, for instance. When you're on your computer, what do you see? A saturation of official government messaging. You log into any device, and there it is, state propaganda. Google also has multiple ways to remove content. Take the Lighthouse videos, for example. People upload them, and they disappear. It feels like we're in a war on many fronts. There's a communications war, a production war. Studies back this up. About 5 months ago, a local university, Gavidia University, analyzed how many pro-government videos are produced each day. On a single day, across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, they counted 212 pro-government videos. That's a massive operation, not just in terms of production, but also advertising, with millions being spent. That's the digital war. The Salvadoran public can't respond. They just consume. No one stops to ask if a video is true or where it comes from. They just accept it. Then there's the economic war. Poverty is rising fast. In the last 5 years, 23,000 people have lost their jobs. This year alone, nearly 11,000 more were laid off due to an IMF agreement. The municipal restructuring from 262 mayoralties down to 40 districts caused thousands more layoffs. And then there's psychological warfare, the state of exception. Constitutional rights are suspended. Anyone can be arrested without cause, without notifying family. Prisons are overcrowded. I estimate around 84,000 of the detainees are innocent. Deaths in custody have surpassed 300. It's a human tragedy. Right now, fear is what keeps everything quiet. But fear can shift sides. Eventually, people start asking, what more can happen?
Socialmente, ahorita esto está calmado por el miedo que ha permeado, pero llega un momento en que el miedo cambia de bando. Llega un momento en que el miedo ya no, pues ya qué más puede pasar, ¿verdad?